So let me give an example from the local level of how a local community can actually fight back. And this is really important. And this is the whole reason, as I said earlier, understanding the threat exists is to train communities to do this. But it's not just giving skills, it's a mindset. It's that over time, as you all have talked about, Americans have transferred, quite frankly, their authority and their responsibility up to what I would call a nanny state. We act like whatever the federal government says goes. That's not at all the way it's supposed to be. So when you have a local community, I'll give you an example. Just recently in Texas, FBI raids a guy's house saying he was somehow involved in January 6th and all this nonsense. The local sheriff does nothing. And in response to citizens asking the sheriff, why didn't you intervene? He's like, well, it's out of my hands. It's a federal matter. The answer is, it's your freaking county. It's your jurisdiction. It's your responsibility. The fact that you're unprofessional and the fact that you're too scared or cowardly to do your duty, that's the problem. Citizens have to hold their local officials culpable. Let's look at what that looks like in reality. Well, the FBI shows up at a citizen's home, whether they're given a heads up or now, if they're given a heads up, the sheriff immediately calls local FBI and says, no, you're not doing that. Before you do anything in my county, I want to see it, right? I want to see it. And if you show up without notifying me, I'm going to put 20 deputies in front of this guy's house and you're not going in. And we will physically block you because it's wrong. And we'll call citizens that we work with in the community and we'll have 100 or 200 of them out there because what you're doing is wrong and I'm not going to tolerate it. And by the way, I'm the law in this county, not you. This is not an Article 6 issue. This is not a supremacy clause issue. This is what you're doing is unjust. And so we're not going to allow it in our county. You can do that with the banks that are doing financing of these groups. Hey, you want to finance Communist China through BLM? Then your bank will shut down in our county. We're shutting this branch down. So if you want to operate, then you need to shut this off. You got 2 hours. And there are a lot of ways to do it. A lot of ways to make people unwelcome. And if that makes people listening or viewing what we're doing right here uncomfortable, then all I would ask is, that's fine that you're uncomfortable. Get out of the way because there's a war on and we don't need you in the middle if you're not sure what's actually going on because we're on the precipice of losing everything. Here's another example. In December, I briefed a governor who asked me to come in because they're getting refugees, Afghan refugees, into their community. And first thing I showed him is like, here are the Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, ISIS, and Hamas operatives wearing suits operating inside the federal government. And I said, now you really think they're vetting your Afghan refugees, right? But the point was, he asked, well, what can I do when they're literally flying them in and landing at one of our airports? I'm like, well, I don't know. You have a National Guard here? You have State Guard? Yes. Well, what if 100 of them were at the airport and when the plane lands and it's taxiing, your National Guard vehicles with National Guard troops are there? They say, yeah, no, nobody gets off this plane. You take that crap, you take right back off, you go land in someone else's state. And if you land here again, we're going to have legal issues with you. I'm going to take whoever's in charge of this thing into custody. How's that? Does he have the authority to do it? You're damn right he does. Because they don't meet, first of all, the legal definition of a refugee, number one. Number two, they're being brought in. The FBI is telling them they're vetted. How are you vetting them? How are you vetting people that don't know their own birth dates? I can tell you from being over there, most people who grew up in Afghanistan, they don't know their own birthday. You want to know why most of their birth dates are January 1st of some year? Because nobody knows, because nobody cares. And you're going to vet them how? What system in Afghanistan do they have to vet their people? None. We can't even keep Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, ISIS, and Hamas guys out of the US government. And you're going to tell me you're going to vet somebody living in a village, Afghanistan, doesn't know their, I mean, give me a break. So there are legal ways, but what it requires is knowledge and courage. And I haven't seen one governor yet do anything like this, not one. But these are things that need to be done at the local and state level that can be done. And all it requires are citizens to put the branding iron to the backside of these governors and county officials. proverbially speaking, of course.